So importance is also given to Sandhya at the time of noon, thumb. But in that case, the power is utilized in a different way. So Babuji is talking about three Sandhyas: morning Sandhya, afternoon Sandhya, and the evening Sandhya. He just, in the earlier part, he talked about the morning Sandhya. Now he's talking about the noon Sandhya, which is the thumb. The sun's rays are quite direct at the time, causing greater heat. Afternoon sun, there is a lot of heat. Nature's external heat, eternal heat, which proceeds from the origin, is also attached with it. ಇದನ್ನೇ ನಾನು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು. ಇದೊಂದು ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಹೇಳಿದೆ. When we sit in the terrace for meditation, what happens ಅಂತ? Not only you get the sunlight, but the nature's eternal heat is also attached to that sunlight. That is the reason why you actually get nourishment as far as your spiritual growth and sensitivity is concerned. When you sit in the sun and meditate. So you have two choices. Either you can sit in the sun and meditate, or you can actually close your door in the room and then meditate. Far better would be to meditate outside in the sun. So just underline that term. Nature's eternal heat, which proceeds from the origin, is also attached with it. Attached with what? With the sunlight. Thus, indirectly, we connect ourselves with the ultimate power through the medium of the material heat and secure closeness with it. So we utilize the material heat. Through the material heat, we connect with the eternal heat, which comes from the origin. That's what happens when you actually do meditation in the Sandhya in the afternoon. This continues till the time when the heat begins to subside and we draw the fullest benefit thereof. So when we talk about the afternoon Sandhya, we're talking about, say, between 12 and 2, some kind of that period. When the heat is kind of directly coming from the sun, it's also attached with the eternal heat coming from the origin. Now that time that follows, which enable us to have a taste of the condition which comes next, helps you to acquire still further closeness. The sages have therefore advised Sandhya at noon time too. Now the reason is that by continuous influence of the sun's rays gets connected with the plane wherefrom they have originated and which is next to the ultimate. Since the rays of the sun are closest to the perpendicular at noon, the effect brought about by them is most direct owing to the nearness. Apparently, Daji used to meditate only in the afternoon. He used to meditate and he used to say that it's like a bullet from the bolt. Lot of power in the afternoon meditation. Because not only the sun sees is direct, it also carries the heat directly from the origin. So we are actually closest to the origin in that way. So we get direct heat from the origin. The heat which seems to be coming from the sun is in fact the heat of the particles. Now he is differentiating between two heats. The heat which is coming from the origin and the heat which is coming from the sun. So the sun's heat is related to the particles. Thus, if we meditate at noon, our thought gets unconsciously attached to the center or the ultimate. So all of us have a choice to meditate in the afternoon. We will connect directly with the ultimate. Putting it in another way, I may say that in order to solve a problem, we often assume the answer first. This is very similar to now. He's giving an example of algebra, where we assume the answer to be x and then try to solve the problem. That's what we do in algebra, no? Let the answer be x. We assume the answer and then try to work out what is the value of x. Exactly, that's what we are doing. Similarly, in order to solve the problem of life, we assume the very thing first. However hazy it might be to our view, because on arriving at the last phase, the cognizance of the previous one is often lost. In this way, we utilize the excessive heat to our best advantage. But since the material heat at the same time is also great, we do not treat the Sandhya at noon as a compulsory in our system. So both the material heat and the heat from the origin, both are in peak in the afternoon. But since the material heat is at peak, you have to relate to the heat from the origin beyond the material heat. Not many people are able to relate to that. That's the reason why we say that the Sandhya in the afternoon is not mandatory. If you do relate to the absolute heat or the heat coming from the origin beyond the material heat, then afternoon meditation is actually pretty good. But you should have that ability. We were just talking about in the morning. So in idol worship, people connect to the idol. Now when they connect to the idol, they become more grosser. Suppose somebody has the ability to connect to the subtle essence within the idol or the divinity within the idol, they actually become more subtler. So it depends on what you connect to. If you connect to the grosser, you become grosser. If you connect to the subtler, you become subtler. Likewise, if you connect to the material heat of the sun, you become grosser. But if you connect to the heat from the origin, which is also coming along with the material heat, then you actually go to the center pretty fast. You got the point? This is the fundamental principle behind it. Now, during the time that follows, the heat of the sun gradually begins to subside. In other words, we begin to advance towards coolness till we reach the point where both the heat and the coolness are at par. And this is the evening time which is fixed for the practice of Sandhya. It helps us to derive the best full benefit of the time, getting more closely attached to the coolness of the hour. So in the early morning, we actually get attached to the origin of the heat from the origin. In the afternoon also, we overlook the material heat to get connected to the heat from the origin. But in the evening Sandhya, we actually get attached to the coolness of the time. Now, as the time advances further, we go on getting closer and closer to greater coolness. Finally, we reach the point where we are closest to it, and that is the time of the dawn. The sun's rays have thus the least influence at this point of time. It's a scientific principle upon which the division of the timings for puja and sandhya is based in accordance with the natural effect of the time. So it's based on the scientific principle. ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಕೂಲ್ನೆಸ್ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗಿ ಸನ್ ಇನ್ನೂ ಬಂದಿರಲ್ಲ. But you are actually in touch with the heat coming from the origin. So that's why there is a balance between the coolness and the heat in the early morning. That's why you meditate in the morning. In the evening Sandhya, there is again a balance between the coolness and the heat. That's why the evening Sandhya is prescribed. In the afternoon Sandhya, you have the material heat also, heat from the origin also. If you can overlook the material heat and connect to the heat from the origin, the afternoon Sandhya is also good. Okay. Now, a question now arises. Why Sandhya has been fixed only at the time of Sattva and Tamas and not at the time of Rajas? Now, Sattva is morning, Tamas is evening, and Rajas is in the afternoon. The principle of invertendo is well known to everybody. Both terminals are taken into account. The beginning and the end. The beginning is the Sat and the end is the Tam. Inverting them, we get the reverse. The beginning becomes the end and vice versa. The middle in both the case remains the same, or in other words, a hypothetical line which connects the two ends. So middle ಏನು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ದಾರ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಉಲ್ಟಾ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಸೇಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಎರಡು ಎಂಡ್ ಮಧ್ಯದ ಹಾಗೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. So that's the reason why we actually don't insist on the afternoon Sandhya. And the second thing is you need to have an ability to go over the material heat. Then the afternoon Sandhya is good for you. Not many people are able to go over that material heat. For example, many people in the summer season, if they sit for meditation in the afternoon, they start complaining about excessive heat or summer. And they will not be able to go into deeper aspects of meditation because of the heat outside. So that's why we don't actually prescribe the afternoon Sandhya as mandatory. Okay. But if we reverse the cycle of morning and evening, the afternoon remains the same. So we are not going to lose anything. We can just connect with the Sat and the Tam. So Sat is the morning meditation. Raj is the afternoon meditation. Tam is the evening meditation. Although we don't talk about the evening meditation, we talk about evening Sandhya. And then we utilize it for different purpose. Okay. I will now reveal here in the true significance of a little known mystery. Generally, they consider Sat to be the reality. This question will come about the Sat. Generally, people consider Sat to be the reality and treat it as a yardstick for measuring the knowledge of God. The mystery at the bottom is quite unknown to them. In fact, it is all in the sphere of Tam and Tam alone. Yavudu God, the state of God is in the realm of Tam. Now, don't confuse that with Tamassu. Tamassu is a quality or guna. Tam is a state. So, godly state antandre state of Tam. So, we confuse the state of Sat as godly quality. And Babaji is now saying that Sat is in the sphere of Maya only. It has not crossed Maya. So, that's why when we say Rajoguna, Tamoguna, and Sattva-guna, all the three are within the realm of Maya. So, if you want to go to a divine state, you have to cross all the three and become Triguna Theta. So, which means beyond all the three gunas. Then you can say that you are in a state of godly state, in a state of reality. So, that state is called as tham. Not tamasu, but tham. Okay? This is the only thing worth achieving for a true yogi. It is no doubt very difficult to gain access up to this point. To acquire Sat is a very easy job, but the state termed as Tham cannot be easily attained. There is nothing beyond it. Though generally people talk a good deal about it, few amongst them even attempt to secure approach up to it. Even purity, simplicity, and peace are not there in there. It is in fact beyond all of them. This is the very thing which is acquired after persistent labor through several lives. I can boldly assert that even the greatest saints among the world have remained short of the mark in this respect. The state of negation which one craves for and which is the real life abides in it, and all activity cease before one reaches this point. This is the divine mystery which is revealed today. So the state of thumb idiyalla, the state of thumb is the real life. What is there? It is a state of absolute self negation. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ನೆಗೇಷನ್ ಪೀಕ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಆ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ ನಾವು ಸರಿನಾ and what happens there once we reach that stage a real life starts. You have a life here, but then this is a materialistic life that you are leading. Once you go to the state of thumb, your life now acquires a different kind of reality altogether, and that is why it is called as real life. ಸರಿನಾ ಸೊ ಲೈಫ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ಪಿಂಡ ಪ್ರದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಮೆಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಲೈಫ್, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಲೈಫ್, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹ್ಯೂಮೇನ್ ಲೈಫ್, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಡಿವೈನ್ ಲೈಫ್, ಆಮೇಲೆ ರಿಯಲ್ ಲೈಫ್. ಸರಿನಾ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಲೈಫ್, ಹ್ಯೂಮೇನ್ ಲೈಫ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಡಿವೈನ್ ಲೈಫ್ ಈ ಮೂರು ಸೇರಿದ್ರೆ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ದಟ್ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಟುಗೆದರ್ as called as spiritual life. Now once you cross the spiritual life, then you enter into the life of reality or real life. ಇದು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಾ? So when we start meditation, we are in a material life. Our mind is oriented externally. Then as and when you learn meditation, the mind gets oriented internally. Now what happens then? From a materialistic, animalistic person, we gradually become more human in nature. That is human life. As we go towards the Brahmanda, we start becoming humane. In other words, not only we look at our own individual things, we also look for the good of others. So that's why it's called as humane life. Then from the good of others, from the humane life, we gradually move towards the divine life. So the human life, humane life, and divine life, all the three put together is the spiritual life. Now what happens after spiritual life? You get the real life. Many times we use these words. That's why I'm just elaborating what does each one of them mean. So the state of negation which one craves for and which is the real life abides in it, and all activity cease before one reaches this point. This is the divine mystery revealed today. It is the central point of the real state of being, which in most of the cases remain unattained in spite of all the efforts of the pursuer. Perception has no approach up to it. So you cannot perceive it. It can only be felt. It is beyond the perception of the mind, because the realm of reality is beyond mind. You remember, mind region end admele, you enter into the central region. When you enter into the central region, there is no mind. There is no individual mind. Since it's beyond individual mind, it is beyond perception. That's why he's saying the perception has no approach up to it. Is it clear? Sorry, people need to consider this state of thumb as their, people tend to consider this state of thumb as their deadliest enemy. But if you ever happen to study a person in whom this state of complete ignorance is reigning in full swing, you will find that at the highest pitch of advancement, he, like an infant baby, has no awareness of his own condition. Like an infant baby. So once a person goes and establishes their connection with the center, they become like an infant baby. The infant baby is not aware of anything. It's not aware of its body, of its life, of this world, or the parents. It is not aware of anything virtually. So a person who establishes the connection with the center will become like that, an infant baby. And that person has no awareness of his condition of thumb, that they are established in thumb. They have no awareness. But if a slight touch of Sat is applied to it, he will then begin to have the cognizance of the state of the thumb. So in order to recognize the state of thumb, we need some aspect of Sat to be with us. ಇದು ಹೆಂಗಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಆಫ್ ತಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋರು ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ವೆರಿ ಫರ್ಗೆಟ್ಫುಲ್, ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ವೆರಿ ಇಗ್ನೋರೆಂಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಇನ್ನೋಸೆಂಟ್. ಬಟ್ ಸಂಬಡಿ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಎ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಗಾಡ್ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ. ದ ಮೊಮೆಂಟ್ ಯು ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಆಸ್ಕ್ ದಟ್ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್, ಯು ಆರ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಆಡಿಂಗ್ ಎ ಬಿಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಸತ್ ಟು ಹಿಮ್, ಟು ದಿಸ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್. ಸೊ ದೇ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆನ್ಸರಿಂಗ್. If you just leave them by themselves, they cannot answer anything because they are in that state of forgetfulness, right? But the moment you actually ask them some question, they become immensely capable of answering. Now, nobody knows where the answer they are getting from. So, this person appeared like a dumb, ignorant, and innocent person. Suddenly, they start talking about very high-end philosophical and spiritual questions, answers. So you'll be suddenly surprised to hear them talk about all these things. Now, that questioner is adding a part of Sat to the state of Tam. Then the answer comes. You got the point? So that's why many times when you come for meditation, before we start the meditation, we ask something. What do you ask? ಏನ್ ಕೇಳ್ತೀವಿ?
ಹೇಗಿದೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ.
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮುಂಚೆ in general, whenever we start meditation, we ask, do you have any questions? Have you seen that? ಇವತ್ತು ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆನೂ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೇಳಿದೆ, ಏನಾದ್ರು ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಇದೆಯಾ, ಏನಾದ್ರು ಓದಿದ್ರಾ, ಏನಾದ್ರು ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಇದೆಯಾ, ದೆನ್ ವಿ ವಿಲ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಅಂತ. ಏಕೆಂತಂದ್ರೆ the question is like a sat that you add to us to elicit some amount of answers. See, normally when you people come for meditation here, anyway we will be talking so many things, spiritual things. So we don't wait for your question. But suppose you have to wait for a question, then what happens is that you are actually happy in your own condition. Then you are not in a position to talk. When you are not in a position to talk, only when you actually ask a question, then we can talk, not otherwise. There are some abhyasis who come, and then even if we try to talk and explain something, we cannot. So it depends on the condition of the heart of the abhyasi, whether we can actually explain certain spiritual concepts or not. It's not that we can speak. We can only speak if the abhyasi condition provokes us to speak, not otherwise. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಾ? ಸೊ ತುಂಬಾ ಸತಿ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಜನ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸಿಗಳು ಬರ್ತಾರೆ, ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸಿದ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಟು ಟಾಕ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ. And even if you put in effort to talk about some spiritual topics, you just keep feeling, let's start meditation, and you start meditation. And the session will be over pretty fast actually. So within 1 hour, the discussion, the session, the post meditation discussion, everything will be over. Now that depends on the condition of the abhyasi. So anyway, but if a slight touch of Sat is applied to it, he will then begin to have the cognizance of the state of Tam. This is due to the fact that the meeting point between the Sat and the Tam creates a new state, identical with that which was the basis of creation. So when the Sat is added to the Tam, they come together at a meeting point. That meeting point is a new state. Now this new state is akin to the state of creation, the state which was there at the time of creation. That's why answers come out. Otherwise, if it's not in tune with the state of creation, no answers will come out. You got the point? Now you relate to the previous point I said, that in some abhyasis, even when they come, even if we want to speak, we cannot speak anything about spiritual topics. Now what is lacking there?
Sat is lacking.
Sat is lacking, and also when the Sat is lacking, what happens? The meeting point will never come. So since the meeting point between the Sat and Tam will never come, you cannot go back to the point of the origin of the creation. Then no answers come. So when there is no appropriate question, no appropriate answer comes, and nothing will actually take you back to the point of creation. You got the point? So that's why when abhyasis come prepared by reading certain books, by actually reflecting and then actually bringing some queries, that is very, very important for the session to actually do more deeper work. So when you come prepared with some questions, your mind is already dwelling in spirituality. Then when you take the sitting, you will have a lot more benefit. Now, when you come and take the sitting and then you are scratching your head, what to talk, what not to talk, what question to ask. Shall I talk about my yesterday movie or today's RCB match? Then nothing will happen. The sitting will go on, there will be like a routine sitting. Now, it will not be something which is going to have a deeper impact in you. You got the point? So, if you want to have the sitting to have a deeper impact, you need to come better prepared both in the heart and the mind. Now, the principle of invertendo applies here also. The third phase of manifestation relates to the material exposition of the objects of nature. People remain entangled in it, forming numerous ideas and desires. Generally, our eye is attached to anything bright and glaring, which we commonly misunderstand as Sat. So, in people's normal conception or meaning of Sat means anything which is bright and glaring is considered as Sat. That's why many people think that reaching consciousness itself is the goal of life. Now, consciousness is bright and glaring. Compared to samskaras which are darker, consciousness is bright and glaring. So people think that seeing that consciousness itself is the goal of life and they have achieved the goal. So in our system, many abhyasis see consciousness within the first few weeks to few months of meditation with the help of pranamati. But that's not the end of the journey. In fact, that's only the start of the journey. We have to go beyond consciousness. The bright object is nothing but except Maya, and those who talk so highly about it are in fact far away from the spirituality, even not to say of reality. But people have developed such a state of torpidity that they are neither prone to hear nor perceive anything in this connection. They have lost sight of true reality, which is beyond both light and darkness. Please underline that. True reality is beyond both light and darkness. So if you are going to end up seeing only the light or only the darkness, you have not gone to the state of reality. So true reality is something beyond light and darkness. Now this is what has been shown in the emblem of illusion, and which is in a true sense the real state of man's perfection, from where no decline or fall is possible. So once we establish ourselves in the state of reality, there is no question of any fall. Till that time, there is possibility that you might come down to a certain extent. Okay. Now this is a very delicate point of philosophy. The saints have generally called this state of neither light or darkness as Satpad, which is not correct, for this state is much beyond that. Some of the saints, this state of beyond light and darkness, they have given it a name of Satpad. But Satpad comes early. Reality comes after Satpad. So that's what he's saying. So which is not correct, because for this state is much beyond that. The state of reality is much beyond Satpad. This is in fact the reflection of the reality, which is in fact is still beyond. Satpad is what is the state of Satpad andre? It is a reflection of reality. Reality is there, center ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ. ಅದರದ್ದು ರಿಫ್ಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಬಿದ್ದಾಗ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಸತ್ಪದ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. So reality is far beyond Satpad, the state of Satpad. In fact, during Lalaji's times, they used to talk about Satpad as the highest. Before Lalaji and Babuji are able to, what you say, find out the central region and the center. Till then, people used to take Satpad as the highest. Only after Lalaji and Babuji did their research and then came about this concept that beyond Satpad there is the central region, and when you pass through the central region, you come to the center, and that is our goal. Okay. So in other words, During Babuji's time or Lalaji's time, many people used to take Satpad as the highest. And the people who used to come for meditation at that time used to be called as Satsangis. So people who have taken the Satpad as the highest, having the same goal, used to call themselves as Satsangis. See how it has evolved from Lalaji's time to what we have now. So during Lalaji's time, he used to talk about Satpad as the highest, and he also used to talk about Satsangis. But now we don't use the word Satsangis at all. We just use the word Abhyasis and Preceptors. That's all. We don't use the word Satsangis. Okay. Anyway, this may be astonishing to most of the readers, but I have written this only for those who are well advanced in spirituality and who have thorough knowledge of this science. It can only be experienced in a practical way and is not to be found within the bounds of religion. It is an entirely different path. It is in itself a science for which one may not be well fitted unless he develops the capacity to perceive nature with his inner eyes. So this is the science of spirituality that Babuji is now talking about. So what do you need for the science of spirituality? You need an ability to read the nature through the inner eyes. That is what is necessary for reaching the reality or passing through the journey of spirituality. Till then, he can have no approach up to its fringe even, not to speak of knowing or understanding. Religion helps not only to understand that there is something more in nature for him to perceive, but for picking up the pearls, one must oneself dive deep into the ocean. In fact, the very simplicity, the purity, and the innocence of the reality has become a will to it. So, reality is very pure, simple, and innocent. It is beyond all these three, in fact. Although he's talked about purity, innocence, and the simplicity, reality, in fact, is beyond all these three qualities because it has no quality per se. It is the basis for every quality, but it has no quality in itself. Today morning, we were talking about 2 points. First point, we talk about nothingness. Okay. Now, nothingness can be expressed in three different levels: thought of nothingness, feeling of nothingness, state of nothingness. Sarina? Thought of nothingness is in the Pinda Pradesh. Feeling of nothingness is between the 6 to 9 point. State of nothingness is the center. Now, if you want to be even more accurate in terms of words of describing the center or the reality, it is a state of nothingness with a positive connotation. So, what is reality? Reality is a positive state of nothingness. You can say it is plus zero. Mathematically, it is plus zero. It is not minus zero. Although in maths, for zero, we don't attribute either positive or negative. We just take zero as zero. So reality is not that. Reality is positive state of zero. Now, I don't know how do you want to express it mathematically. Positive state of zero. Now, ಯಾರಪ್ಪ ಮ್ಯಾಥ್ಸ್ ಪಂಡ್ರಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಮ್ಯಾಥ್ಸ್ ಪಂಡ್ರ ಬರೀರಪ್ಪ ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಝೀರೋ ದಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿ. ಇವತ್ತು ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮುಂಚೆನೆ ಮಲ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರು, ಅರ್ಧಂಬರ್ಧ ಎಚ್ಚರ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಬೆಳಗಿನ ಜಾವ 5 ರಿಂದ 6 ಗಂಟೆ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಏನೇನೋ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಇದನ್ನ ಮಲ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಏನೇನೋ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಎಚ್ಚರ ಆಗಿತ್ತು, ಆದರೆ ಸೋ ಮೆನಿ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಬೀಯಿಂಗ್ ರಿವೀಲ್ಡ್ at that time between 5 and 6. Although I didn't sit for meditation actually at that time. I was feeling tired. I thought I'll just sleep. But I was awake also. I was lying in the bed, awake, but so many things were coming. Then once I got to this state, ಏನು ತುಂಬ ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್, ನಥಿಂಗ್ನೆಸ್ ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ, then I sat for meditation. I sat only for 10-15 minutes today morning. But it was very nice meditation. Yeah, sometimes all these things happen. When you get into this habit of lying on the bed, but you are awake into the consciousness, awareness is there, but you are not sleeping, but you are still lying on the bed. Now that's a wonderful state. You are lying on the bed, so ego is neutral. The mind is not active. Okay? Ego is neutral. Awareness is there. You are awake. You are not sleeping. Whatever occurs in the consciousness, you can easily feel everything at that time. ಇದು ತನಗೆ ತಾನಾಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ನಾಳೆ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆಯಿಂದ 5 ಗಂಟೆಗೆ ಎಚ್ಚರ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಲ್ಕೊಂಡು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ನಿದ್ದೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀರ. It will happen as and when you develop your awareness. This state will come. Now this state has been coming on and off for many years now. ನಾವು UK ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ 15 ವರ್ಷ, ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ 20 ವರ್ಷನೇ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಬಂತು. ಸೊ ವಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಟು ಗೆಟ್ ದಿ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಆನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಆಫ್, ಬಟ್ ಇಟ್ ನೌ ಬಿಕಮ್ ಮೋರ್ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆಂಟ್. The reason why it's become more frequent is last 2 years we've been doing a lot of midnight meditation. 2 ಗಂಟೆಗೆ ಎಚ್ಚರ ಆದರೆ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, 3 ಗಂಟೆಗೆ ಎಚ್ಚರ ಆದರೆ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಸೊ whenever you wake up in the middle of the night, you sit for meditation. Now when you practice this early morning state which I just described, lying, ego neutral, mind inactive, awake, not asleep but aware, ವಂಡರ್ಫುಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್. ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಯಾರು ಅದನ್ನು ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ ನೋಡೋಣ. ಒನ್ಸ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾಚ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಎಂಜಾಯ್. ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಎಂಜಾಯ್ ದಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಮೋರ್ ದನ್ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್. ಸಿ ಇನ್ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಅಟ್ ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ವೆನ್ ಯು ಸಿಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, ದ ಈಗೋ ಇಸ್ ಟರ್ನ್ಡ್ ಆನ್. ಸೊ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಓವರ್ಕಮ್ ದ ಬ್ಯಾರಿಯರ್ ಆಫ್ ಈಗೋ ಅಂಡ್ ದೆನ್ ಗೋ ಇನ್. ವೆನ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಲೈಂಗ್ ಡೌನ್ ಬಟ್ ನಾಟ್ ಅಸ್ಲೀಪ್, ದ ಈಗೋ ಇಸ್ ನ್ಯೂಟ್ರಲ್. ಯು ಡೋಂಟ್ ಈವನ್ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ವರಿ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ ಈಗೋ. ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಆಟೋಮೆಟಿಕ್ಲಿ ಗೋ ಇನ್ ಟು ದ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಆಫ್ what you say meditative state with awareness. ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಿ ನೋಡಿ. ನಿದ್ದೆ ಹೊರಟೋಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಚಿಂತೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಡಿ. ಲಾಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಟ್ರೈ, ಬಟ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಇನಿಷಿಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಜಸ್ ದೇ ಗೋ ಟು ಸ್ಲೀಪ್. ಓಕೆ, ಬಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ವರ್ತ್ ಟ್ರೈಯಿಂಗ್. even if you actually get the state on and off, it is a really nice sublime state. ಸರಿ, ಈ ಲೈಟ್ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಬರೆದಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, we were seeing this light 20 years back, the light of the consciousness in the early morning. And that was a very, very nice state. And then we thought that that is a very high state. But now, Babaji is saying that you have to go beyond light and darkness. Forget about light. Many people, when they experience the light, they become enamored. They become, what do you say, captivated by the light that they see inside. There's one Abhyasi who comes here for sitting. For days together, she was just saying, I'm seeing very bright white light, bright white light. Then after a few sessions, I told her, you have to move beyond bright white light. That's not your goal. So then, in the last few weeks now, she's able to move beyond the bright light, and then she's able to experience so many other things now. Otherwise, she used to take sittings online. And then all that she thought was meditation was that you see the bright light and sit. That is meditation. That's what she had the idea when she came for meditation here. So when we explained that is not what meditation is, there are a lot of things to unfold. Then she gradually started aligning to the work of the meditation. Sari, ee paragraph ಓದ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ, then we'll have some questions, if at all there are any questions. Performing Sandhya, this book has been written not for the novices, but for those who are highly advanced in spirituality. ಇದು ನೋವಿಸಸ್ ಗಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ, ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಓದ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಕಷ್ಟ ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಹೂ ಆರ್ ವೆಲ್ ವರ್ಸ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುಯಾಲಿಟಿ, ದ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುಯಾಲಿಟಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್. Performing of Sandhya before sunrise is stressed upon for the reason that the external heat and the other influences which have been driven out of the body may not creep in again by the effect of the sun, which would prevent us deriving the best advantage of the time. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ early morning before sunrise ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. The Sandhya needs to be performed early morning before sunrise. It has been generally advised, and Western culture too supports the view that a separate place must be. Now, time ಆಯ್ತು ಇದುವರೆಗೂ, ಇಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಟೈಮ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. In the end, he comes to the conclusion the best time to do meditation is before sunrise, when the heat of the sun is still not yet taken over and the coolness is still persisting in the system, mind is still not active. That's the best time to meditate. It has been generally advised, and the Western culture too supports the view that a separate place must be reserved for each type of work, so that relevant thoughts conducive to the nature of the work may spring up on arriving at the place. Man possesses power which he has derived from his thought connection with the reality. ಈ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ನಿಮಗೆ, ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಯುವರ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಇಸ್ ಕನೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಟು ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಬರೋದು. ನಿಮಗೆ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ವಾ, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಬರೋದು ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಯಾವ ತರ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಯಾಕೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಸಬ್ ಕಾನ್ಶಿಯಸ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ.
ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಬರೀತಾ ಇದೆ ನೋಡಿ, man possesses power which he has derived from his thought connection with the reality. So since man's mind is connected to reality, it draws power from the reality. So man's mind possesses that power.
ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಹಂಗಾರೆ ಬರೋದು ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಅಂತಾನ, ಅದ್ರ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್?
ಪವರ್ ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಎರಡು ಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಇಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಒಂದು, ಇಟ್ ರೈಸಸ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಸ್ ಗೆಟಿಂಗ್ ವೈಬ್ರೇಟೆಡ್. ಇಟ್ ರೈಸಸ್ ಟು ದ ಸರ್ಫೇಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೈಂಡ್. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಪರ್ಸೀವ್ಡ್ as thought. That is one source. The second source of thought is the instructions that are descending through the first mind of God and then through other parts of the journey. That also eventually can be grasped by the human mind. So that is another source of thought. ಎರಡು ಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಗಳಿಂದ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಡಿವಿನಿಟಿಯಿಂದ, ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಇಂದಾನೆ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಕೆಳಗಡೆಗೆ. ಅದು ನಮಗೆ ವೆನ್ ವಿ ಬಿಕಮ್ ಸೆನ್ಸಿಟಿವ್ ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾಚ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದೋಸ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್. ಈ ಸಿನಿಮಾದೆಲ್ಲ ತೋರಿಸಿದಾಗ ನೋಡಿದಾರ, ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಒಬ್ರು ಭಕ್ತ ಹುಟ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ಅವ್ರ ಅಪ್ಪ ಅಮ್ಮನಿಗೆ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ದೇವರು ಬಂದು ನಿನಗೆ ವರಪ್ರಸಾದ ಹುಡುಕ್ತಾನೆ, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ತೋರಿಸಿದಾರಲ್ಲ, ನೋಡಿದಾರೆ ಸಿನಿಮಾ? ಸುಮಾರು ಸಿನಿಮಾ ತೋರಿಸಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ನೀವು ಸಿನಿಮಾ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಸಿನಿಮಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಪ್ಪ ಅಮ್ಮ ದೇವ್ರ ಭಕ್ತರಾಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ದೇವರು ಬಂದು ಅನುಗ್ರಹ ಮಾಡ್ದಂಗೆ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ, ನಿಮಗೆ ಇಂಥ ಮಗ ಹುಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಅವನು ದೈವಿ ಸಂಪನ್ನನಾಗಿರ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಆಶೀರ್ವಾದ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಂಗೆ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ತೋರಿಸಿದಾರ? ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಡಿವೈನ್ ರೆಲ್ಮ್. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಒರಿಜಿನೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸಿಸ್. ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಎ ಡಿವೈನ್ ರೆಲ್ಮ್. ಸರಿನಾ? ನಿದ್ದೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಮೋರ್ ಲೈಕ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಡಿವೈನ್ ರೆಲ್ಮ್. ನಿದ್ದೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರ್ ಈಗೋ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಸೊ ದ ಡಿವೈನ್ ಥಾಟ್ಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಕಮ್ ಥ್ರೂ ಟು ಅವರ್ ಪರ್ಸೀವಿಂಗ್ ಮಚ್ ಮೋರ್ ಈಸಿಲಿ ಇನ್ ಸ್ಲೀಪ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಾಬೂಜಿ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಜನಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ನಿದ್ದೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋರು. ರಾತ್ರಿ ಮಲ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸಿಗಳು, ಅವಾಗ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋರು. ಯಾಕೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅವಾಗ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಈಗೋ ಅಡ್ಡ ಬರ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾರು ಈಗೋನು ಅಡ್ಡ ಇರಲ್ವಾ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಗೊರಕೆ ಹೊಡಿತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವಾಗ ಈಗೋ ಅಡ್ಡ ಬರಲ್ಲ, ಗೊರಕೆ ಅಡ್ಡ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. But Babaji used to work in night, so it's easier to work in the night because Abhyasi's ego does not interfere with the work of the meditation. When one resolves to do a thing, the connecting link between the thought and the work becomes intensified, and one begins to draw power from the real source in accordance to the strength of the thought. This is underline ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ. ಈ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, when one resolves to do a thing, ಯಾವುದೋ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರಿ, ಅವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ದ ಕನೆಕ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ ದ ಥಾಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದ ವರ್ಕ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗರ್. ನಾಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗರ್, ವಿ ಡ್ರಾ ಪವರ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ರಿಯಲ್ ಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಅಕಾರ್ಡೆನ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಸ್ಟ್ರೆಂತ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಥಾಟ್. ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ದ ಥಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗ್, ವಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ದಟ್ ಮಚ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪವರ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಸೆಂಟರ್. ಇಫ್ ದ ಥಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ವೀಕ್, ವಿ ಡೋಂಟ್ ಡ್ರಾ ದಟ್ ಮಚ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪವರ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಸೆಂಟರ್. When the power begins to flow in and we associate it with a particular point of time, then the remembrance of the work begins to revive in our heart and we begin to feel attached to it in some way or the other. So, ಈಗ ನಾವು ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಆಗಿ ಒಂದೇ ಟೈಮಿಗೆ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ. ದಿನ 6 ಗಂಟೆ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಥವಾ ದಿನ 5:30 ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ. ಅವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ವೆದರ್ ಯು ಲೈಕ್ ಇಟ್ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್, ದ ಪವರ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಡೇ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ಡ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲಾರಿಟಿ. ದಿನ ಅದೇ ಟೈಮಿಗೆ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದೇ ಟೈಮ್ಗೆ ಆ ಪವರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಮೊದಲು ಡ್ರಾ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತೀರ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ತಾನಾಗಿ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಪವರ್ ಯಾವಾಗ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗುತ್ತೋ, ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ವೋಕ್ಸ್ ದ ಥಾಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ವಿಚ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಒರಿಜಿನಲಿ ಡ್ರಾನ್ ದ ಪವರ್. ಸೊ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಡ್ರಾನ್ ದ ಪವರ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಸೇಕ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್. ನೌ ದಟ್ ಪವರ್ ಮೇಕ್ಸ್ ಯು ಮೆಡಿಟೇಟ್. ದಟ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಸ್. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ? ದಟ್ಸ್ ದ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್. So if you are regular in your practice, the timing actually helps you in doing meditation much more easily without any difficulty. You got the point? This particular point, nimage example kelbodu. What is the importance of time as far as meditation is concerned? So when the power begins to flow in, we associate with the particular point of time, and then the remembrance of the work begins. Ili remembrance of the work andre enu? Meditation is the work that we are supposed to do at that time. So we remember the work and we start doing the work. It begins to revive in our heart and we begin to feel attached to it in some way or the other. The room, ಇದು ಎರಡನೇದಾಯ್ತು. ಸೊ ಇದುವರೆಗೂ ಟೈಮ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಅಂಡ್ ನಾವು ರೆಗ್ಯುಲಾರಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದ ಟೈಮ್, ರೆಗ್ಯುಲಾರಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟೀಸ್ ಅದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ವಿ ಈಗ. ಸರಿನಾ? ಟೈಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎರಡು ರೀತಿ. ಒಂದು, ವೆನ್ ಟು ಡೂ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್, ಬಿಫೋರ್ ಸನ್ರೈಸ್, ಆಫ್ಟರ್ನೂನ್ ಆರ್ ಈವ್ನಿಂಗ್. ದೆನ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ ದ ಥಾಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಆಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದ ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿ. ಈ ಮೂರಿದೆ ಇವಾಗ. ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಥಾಟ್, ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಅನ್ ಆಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿ. Whenever we resolve to do something in our thought, it starts drawing power from the reality and the action starts getting implemented. So that is the importance of regularity of the time. ಸರಿನಾ? ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅದೇ ಟೈಮಿಗೆ ಪವರ್ ಫ್ಲೋ ಆಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಪವರ್ ಫ್ಲೋ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾತಕ್ಕೆ ಪವರ್ ಫ್ಲೋ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಆ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಕುತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ವರ್ಕ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಚೋಸನ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಟ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಟೈಮ್. Is that clear? ಏನು ಧೀರಜ್ ಏನು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ? ಅರ್ಥಮಾಯ್ತುಂದ?
ಎಸ್ ಬ್ರದರ್, ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತು.
ಅರ್ಥಮಾಯ್ತುಂದ?
ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತು ಬ್ರದರ್.
ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ? వింటున్నారు కదా?
ఎస్ బ్రదర్.
Okay, good. So I'm learning Telugu by talking to you now. మాట్లాడితే నేను తెలుగు కలుస్తున్నాను. So some grammatical errors will be there, so don't mind about it.
ಓಕೆ.
ಏನ್ರಿ ಪ್ರವೀಣ್ ಏನೋ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರ? నేర్చుకుంటున్నానా? ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಲಿಸನಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತನಾ?
ಕಲಿತಾ ಇದೀನಿ.
ಲರ್ನಿಂಗ್. నేర్చుకుంటాను ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಲರ್ನಿಂಗ್. ಓಕೆ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ಸ್ ಎ ನ್ಯೂ ವರ್ಡ್. ಪ್ರವೀಣ ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ವರ್ಡ್ నేర్చుకుంటున్నాను. ಆಯ್ತು. ಸೊ ಪ್ರವೀಣಿಗೆ ತೆಲುಗು ಬರುತ್ತಾ? ಅದಂಗೆ ತೆಲುಗು ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಬೀದರ್ನವರಾಗಿ? ಬಾರ್ಡರ್ ಅಂತನಾ?
ಒಂದ್ ಸೈಡ್ ತೆಲಂಗಾಣ, ಒಂದ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಮಹಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ.
ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ಮರಾಠಿನೂ ಬರುತ್ತಾ?
ಮದರ್ ಟಂಗ್ ಮರಾಠಿ.
ಮನೇಲಿ ಮರಾಠಿನ ಮಾತಾಡೋದಾ? ಓಕೆ.
ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಕಿರೀಟ ಬೀದರ್.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಕಿರೀಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಕೊಂಡು ಒದ್ದಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಈ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಮರಾಠಿ ಪುಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಈ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ತೆಲುಗು ಪುಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಕೊಂಡು ವಿಳಿ ಒದ್ದಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
ಕಿರೀಟ ಆದ್ರೆ ಕಿರೀಟ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ.
ಆಯ್ತು, ಸರಿ, ಮುಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗೋಣ. ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ the room or the place where we sit for meditation is also charged by our thought force and a feeling of sanctity begins to prevail all over therein. ಇದನ್ನ ಅಂಡರ್ಲೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ. So wherever we meditate ಅಲ್ಲ regularly, so the place actually starts getting charged by our thought force. So a feeling of sanctity prevails everywhere. This influence taken in by the place helps us further in the accomplishment of the task. The task here is meditation. So if we are regularly meditating at that place, the moment we enter that place, we are entering into a place of purity. And immediately the mind actually starts going towards meditation. Now it depends upon one's individual capacity to expand it as much as possible. So when you meditate, you have to, that's why I keep saying that when you meditate, have the thought that the entire universe is meditating with you. Don't think that only you are meditating. If you think that you are meditating, of course you will go in, but the expansion of that meditative state into the atmosphere will not occur. So if you sit with the thought that the entire universe is meditating with me and I am also being part of that, then what happens is whatever meditative state that you get in your own heart gradually starts expanding into the atmosphere. Now many people complain that nobody in the house is getting influenced by their meditation. Okay, and many husbands complain that I keep telling my wife, she does not listen to me only about meditation. Then I keep counseling them, not to worry, that is the right position. She does not have to listen to you. That means your family life is going well. If unusually they start listening to everything that you say, something is wrong. Okay, so it's important that that difference is maintained. Now, although I'm joking about it, the husband is actually doing something wrong. They are sitting with the thought that they alone are meditating. When they alone are meditating, they get the internal condition, but that internal condition does not expand into the atmosphere in order to influence the other family members. When we sit with the thought that we're actually meditating, the entire universe is meditating and we are part of it, then what happens? Automatically, the condition starts expanding into the atmosphere. When the condition expands into the atmosphere, then all the people in the house over a period of time start coming under the influence of that particular meditative state. You got the point? So the influence taken in by the place helps us further in the accomplishment of the task. Now it depends upon one's individual capacity to expand this as much as possible. It can be generally observed, and the sacred shrines are a living proof of it, that this influence is not exhausted even with a lapse of time. And even today, pilgrims and visitors get benefited by it. Not only this, since the air blows through, it carries its fragments to the adjoining layers also. Now, there is contraction and expansion in each layer, so the effect that cause continues to develop and expand. So ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಯೂನಿಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ ಅದು. It influences one layer of air, so there is contraction or expansion. Then the next layer appears to be contracted. So this expansion now has an impact on the state of contraction, which in turn actually creates the next state of expansion. So it's like a spring action, both inside and outside. So it keeps expanding further and further away. That's how it works. As regards asana or posture, it is well-known step in yoga. It is treated as a preliminary step and is much emphasized upon by the Mahatmas. Though the mystery at the bottom has not been revealed yet, everything comes to light at the destined time. Now he's talking about the next part, which is the importance of asana as far as our meditation goes. Now, before creation, everything was in an almost inactive state and had dissolved into the origin. So before origin or creation, everything was in inactive state. Now, but though they were dissolved in the origin, losing their individuality, the previous impressions persisted. This was because of the shade of reality which they remained under till the time of dissolution, which helped them to retain the effect of the impressions during the entire period of their existence. The impressions that we carry, although the individuality of the soul is lost at the time of Mahapralaya, they go back to the origin, but the impressions are the, what do you say, the impact of the impressions is still retained by the individual souls. And that becomes the seed for the next creation. Okay? So the impressions are actually going back to the origin. The individual aspect of the soul is lost. All the things in creation merge into universal identity. But even in that universal identity, the soul will retain the impact of the past impressions that it had carried through the course of the reality when it was there in the previous creation. Now, since it carries the impact of that impressions, that becomes the seed for the next creation. Now, at the time of Mahapralaya, different souls carry different impact of the impressions. So how the next creation will be depends on the sum total of these impact of the creations or the impressions that the souls carry. So the next creation might be entirely different from the previous creation. You got the point? So two creations will never be repeated as such. Every aspect of creation is unique. And so the creation will be uniquely and newly generated or newly created. How the next creation comes about. So each creation is unique. How long they continue to observe this effect and is beyond human imagination to determine. It must at least have been during the entire period of their existence since the time of creation. The effect taken in by them was no other than the motion which generated from the shocks of the root power. Now, this being saturated with the effect remained silently active and this continued indefinitely. It is known as the latent motion around the center. What is this is the only place where he is defining about what is the latent motion of the center. The latent motion, which is concentrated energy, cuts out crevices for the power to burst forth and flow out afresh, leading to the reformation of the universe. So Mahapralaya ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲ things which are there, they go back to the origin and they lie next to the origin where there is latent motion. The latent motion then actually burst forth in the form of new creation. What is the reason for the latent motion bursting forth as powers? It is the kshob. How does the kshob come about? Because of the thought of creation that comes in the center. When the time for creation or the thought for creation is ready, it has an impact on the latent motion. A kshob is created in the latent motion. When the kshob is created in the latent motion, the power from the latent motion bursts forth in different directions. And that becomes the cause of the next creation. So before creation, what was there? Everything was merged in the origin, next to the origin, very close to the origin, and there was latent motion. Now the question is, why was there latent motion? Because the impressions of the past cycle was there still. Now, at the time of recreation, the thought from the center descends into the latent motion and it creates an impact in the latent motion, and that impact is called as kshob or stir. Now, when the stir occurs, whatever powers were there in the latent motion, that will then burst forth as powers. They then becomes the means based on which the next set of creation comes about. This is how the creation got its origin anta ಬರೀತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಬಾಬುಜಿ. ಕ್ರಿಯೇಷನ್ ಹೇಗೆ ಬಂತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಎಟರ್ನಲ್ ಅಂತ ಬರೀತಾರೆ. ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದರು ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ವರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಬರೀತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎವಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಇನ್ವಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಬೋತ್ ಆರ್ ಎಟರ್ನಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಎವಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ involution, evolution, both are continuously going on. ಆಯ್ತಾ, ಒಂದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಬರಲೇಬೇಕು. If there is involution, it is always followed by evolution. If there is evolution, it is always followed by involution. You cannot stop this cycle. The center is apart from these cycles of involution and evolution. That's what I want you to understand. The center itself is apart from the cycles of involution and evolution. So creation andre evolution, Mahapralaya antandre involution ಅಷ್ಟೇ. So where are we supposed to go? We are supposed to go and establish our connection with the center, which is nothing to do with involution or evolution. ಇದು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಾ? So center ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ that thing which remains constant irrespective of whether the creation is in evolution or involution. That is the center. ಯಾರು ಬಂದ್ರಾ ಧೀರಜ್ಗೆ? ಸರಿ, ಏನು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಹಲೋ.
ಹಾ,
ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ ಎನಿವೆ ಮಹಾಪ್ರಳಯ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಾಪಸ್ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೋಗತ್ತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಷ್ಟೊಂದೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ?
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್, ಗುಡ್ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್. ಇದು ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಈ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಎವ್ರಿವನ್ ಗೆಟ್ಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್. ಇಷ್ಟೊಂದೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾಕೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ವೈ ಶುಡ್ ವಿ ಡೂ ಎನಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಅಟ್ ಆಲ್? ಆರಾಮಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ದೋಸೆ, ಇಡ್ಲಿ, ಚಟ್ನಿ, ವಡೆ, ಬೋಂಡ ತಿನ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ಬೋದಲ್ಲ ಮಲ್ಟಿಪಲ್ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? The reason why we do all these things is, if you do not do all these things, if you allow only the nature to continue to work on you, it takes millions of lives. And the trouble is, every time we come into this life to get rid of some set of samskaras. But what we end up doing is, we actually load more set of samskaras than what we lost. So rather than making the samskaras become less and less after life, we actually go on adding samskaras life after life. We increase the load. Aita. So if you allow the nature to work, you go through the same set of life's difficulties, ups and downs, everything, all the sufferings for millions of lives. You don't know how many lives you have got. In order to cut short all these things, you are actually practicing spirituality so that you don't need to undergo this life cycle for so many lives. And you can be established in near the center in one life only. That is what you are trying to do. Essentially, you are trying to cut down all the sufferings that is associated with all the lives which are going to come in due course. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ? That's why you are doing all the practices. Otherwise, as you say, there are a lot of people in this world who are not meditating. There are a lot of people in this world who are not into any spirituality or religion, but still they are leading a life. Now, these are the people who will be kind of revolving around here millions of times. ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ, ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. So that is why we call this as the cycle of life and death. So if you want to go to the center, you need to escape the cycle of life and death. And that's what we are trying to do. ಸರಿನಾ? So ಇನ್ಯಾರಿಗೊಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಮಹಾಪ್ರಳಯ ಆದಾಗ ಇವಾಗ ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಸೇ ಯುವರ್ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ನಿಯರ್ ದ ಸೆಂಟರ್, ಸೊ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಲ್ ಯು ಕಮ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಅಗೇನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಡೂ ಆಲ್ ದಿಸ್ ಅಗೇನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಗೋ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಟು ಸೆಂಟರ್,
Yes.
ಆರ್ ಯುವರ್ ದೇರ್?
You are there, Astini. You might actually help the nature by becoming a power of nature. Who
Okay.
knows? Some of you might become Indra, some of you might become Brahma, some of you might become Shiva. Who knows what you will become in the next creation? You will become one of the powers of creation to help out in the creation. ಸರಿನಾ? ಈಗ once you have actually studied in the college and actually graduated out, even though you might go back to the college, but you will not go back to the college as the same student, alva? Very similar. Even though you go back to the college, but you will be there as a faculty or a teacher, not as a student. Very similar. In the next creation, you will become a faculty or a teacher or a power of nature or one demigod. But you will not be there as a student like an individual soul.
ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ ಸೆಂಟರ್ಗೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಬಿಯಾಂಡ್ ಪ್ರಳಯ ಆಲ್ಸೋ.
ಹೌದು, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್. ಸೆಂಟ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೋಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಯು ಆರ್ ಬಿಯಾಂಡ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾಕಾ ಬುಸುಂದಿ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಕಾಕಾ ಬುಸುಂದಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಯೋಗ ವಶಿಷ್ಠದಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ನೋಡ್ರಿ, ಯಾರು ಓದೋಂಗಿದ್ರೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಬಂದ್ರೆ. ಕಾಕಾ ಬುಸುಂದಿ ಅಂತ, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಎ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಕ್ರೋ. Now that is immortal. It is not affected by the cycles of creation and pralaya. It always is beyond the state of creation and pralaya. So it sees all these things coming and going, coming and going. It is unaffected by it. So Kaka Busindi anta ondide ಆ ಥರದ್ದು.
ಓಕೆ.
ಆ ಥರ people also can go to that state where they can actually look at all this creation coming and going without being affected by it. Like we don't get affected by the dreams that we have in the night. We don't need to get affected by creation or dissolution. I'll still be fine. ಸರಿನಾ? ಸರಿ, ಓಕೆ. ಇನ್ಯಾರು ಹುಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇವಾಗ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ? ದಟ್ಸ್ ಗುಡ್. ಸೊ ಒನ್ ಮೋರ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಟು ಆಸ್ಕ್ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ಸ್, ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಗುಡ್. ಇವತ್ತು ವರುಣ್ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿಲ್ಲ, ಪ್ರವೀಣ್ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಕ್ವೈಟ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಬರೀ ಹಸನ್ಮುಖರಾಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ನಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅವರು.
ಬ್ರದರ್, ನಂಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ತಮ್ಮ ಸತ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ತಮ್ಮ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ ತಮ್ಮ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅಬೌವ್ ಕಾನ್ಶಿಯಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಕಾನ್ಶಿಯಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ ಡಿವೈನ್.
ಕಾನ್ಶಿಯಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಯು ಆರ್ ಇನ್ ದ 3 ಗುಣಾಸ್, ತಮಸ್ಸು, ರಜಸ್ಸು ಮತ್ತೆ ಸತ್ವ. 3 ಗುಣಾಸ್. The state of thumb is beyond consciousness, beyond the root of consciousness.
Correct. So ರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿಗೆ ಹೋದಾಗ ಕಾನ್ಶಿಯಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಏನು ಇರೋದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ವಾ? So there is nothing.
Reality ಹೋದಾಗ initially there will be awareness. Even that awareness also will go. You will establish yourself in a state of unawareness or unknowingness or knowledgelessness. That is the state that you will get when you go towards the center. And that is totally unaware. So they are not aware of their condition of thumb. When somebody asks them some question about divinity, they are able to answer.
Okay.
That's what we read, no?
Correct.
So they themselves don't know that they are in state of thumb. But when somebody asks a question, then they realize that they were in a state of thumb while answering.
So but that's a new state ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ವಾ?
It's a new state, correct. That's not the original state. Original state is established in the state of thumb.
Correct. Okay.
ಓ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಕಣ್ರಿಯ. ಸೊ ಸುಮಾರು ಹುಷಾರಾಗಿ ಕೇಳ್ತೀರಿ ಎಲ್ರು. ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಎಲ್ಲಾನು ತಲೆ ಅಲ್ಲಾಡ್ಸಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ಸ್ ಗುಡ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ. ಸೊ ತುಂಬ ಇನ್ಕ್ವಿಸಿಟಿವ್ನೆಸ್ ಉಂಟು. ಸೊ ಅದು ಕಲ್ತ್ಕೋಬೇಕು, ಇದು ಕಲ್ತ್ಕೋಬೇಕು, ಇದು ಕ್ಲಾರಿಟಿ ಬೇಕು, ಅದು ಕ್ಲಾರಿಟಿ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಗುಡ್. ಸರಿನಾ?